Afternoon. The committee will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess at any time. Today, the Rules Committee is convening to consider two measures, H.R. 4553 and H.Res. 668. H.R. 4553, the Energy and Water Development and Related Agencies Appropriations Act 2026, provides substantive funding for our nation's nuclear deterrence, national security posture, infrastructure, and the broader economy overall. This legislation further cements our commitment to fortify American energy, lower cost, and advance power to the nation that is as affordable as it is reliable. The nation, and especially the American people, deserve this. H.R. 4553 supports one of the largest commitments to expand mining production technologies for critical mineral extraction in decades. It provides continued funding for cybersecurity efforts that will secure a more resilient and reliable electric grid for all Americans. It takes a calculated and measured approach to halt foreign adversaries from accessing technology, natural resources, and defense capabilities that make America strong. And this legislation makes a deliberate effort to safeguard the tax dollars of hardworking Americans from being spent on the outdated, misguided priorities of the previous administration. It is abundantly clear that we need to advance H.R. 4553 to build upon our nation's return to energy independence. H.Res. 668 directs the Oversight Committee to continue its work in investigating and obtaining relevant documents related to the Epstein files. So far, the Oversight Committee has issued subpoenas on a bipartisan basis and has collected tens of thousands of documents from the Department of Justice. Chairman Comer has been conducting and leading this investigation with openness and diligence. It's how Congress is supposed to operate. We should all take note of how quickly the DOJ has responded to these bipartisan subpoenas. When was the last time anyone can remember the DOJ, under any administration, responding to a subpoena in less than a month? Our Democrat colleagues have a unique opportunity here in the Rules Committee today. So unique, in fact, that they can join Republicans in a spirit of bipartisanship. They can support, as Republicans intend to do, the Oversight Committee's continued work to investigate and publicly release the Epstein files. Now our Democrat colleagues will predictably say that legislation is a distraction. And if they don't want to support transcribed interviews, more documents being obtained, and the bipartisan work of the Oversight Committee, it will be rather intriguing. See, their newfound interest in the Epstein files, and yes, it's entirely newfound, will be brought into even more question. They didn't say a peep the last 4 years when they had the opportunity to release the files. They did nothing. The only reason why they've latched themselves to the Epstein files as of late is because they see it as a politically advantageous opportunity. Let's see what they decide to do. With that, I yield to the ranking member, Mr. McGovern, for any comments he wishes to make.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and it's great to see you and my colleagues on the committee. So here we are again, more Republican measures written for and by big oil, big gas, and big mining for polluters, not people. A deeply partisan energy and water funding bill that will jack up costs for American families while giving China the advantage in clean energy. And hanging over it all is a looming Republican-made shutdown. We are supposed to be here to do the people's work, fund the government, keep our water safe, make energy affordable. Well, let's be honest, this majority has one obsession: burying the Epstein files. That's the through line. Every delay, every diversion, every broken promise, it all comes back to the same thing: protecting the powerful instead of telling the truth. We saw it before the August district work period. You voted against transparency again and again. voted against releasing the Epstein files again and again. Then you guys rolled out a laughable resolution by my good friend, Mr. Norman, a press release dressed up as a bill, a resolution which didn't even have the force of law, and then you guys skipped town without even ever voting on it. Republicans paraded around a fake resolution, but never voted on it because you never planned to vote on it. It was completely fake, concocted to make it look like Republicans were doing something. And here you go again, another fake resolution that literally directs a committee to do what it was already doing. Republicans are trying to kick the can down the road even more, telling oversight, keep looking into it. Give me a break. Translation, you want a congressional committee to slow walk the release of just some of the files. At this point, Republicans should just admit that you're covering for your rich and powerful friends. It's that simple. This isn't complicated. And even while Republicans stall, even while they try to distract, Republicans continue to break promise after promise. Remember the Speaker's big promise? No August recess until all the appropriation bills are done. I'm quoting him directly. Well, it's September, and we are only on Bill 3. 3 out of 12. 9 more to go. Another broken promise, another failure of this majority. And all the while, Jeffrey Epstein's partner in crime, Ghislaine Maxwell, magically lands in a country club prison after being interviewed by Trump's political lackeys. Trump moved his convicted child sex offender friend into cushy new digs. And can I even get a peep of criticism or pushback from the other side? This is insane. But we're instead told to focus on these absurd partisan messaging bills. That's the Republican plan. Hide the files, distract the public, protect your friends, and cover for Trump. Republican leadership thought a fake resolution would do it. They thought sending everyone home early would do it. Now they think yet another meaningless resolution will do it. Wrong. The American people aren't buying it, and neither am I. We deserve a Congress that doesn't flinch from hard truths. We deserve leaders who stand up to predators, not cover for them. We deserve real accountability, and we deserve to read the Epstein files and decide for ourselves. Release the files. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. We are in agreement on that issue. Without objection, any prepared statements that our witnesses may have will be included in the record. I now welcome our first panel, Representative Fleischman and Representative Kaptur from the Committee on Appropriations. Your full statement will be submitted for the record. We ask you summarize your statement in 5 minutes. Representative Fleischman, I welcome your testimony.
Thank you, Chairwoman Fox and Ranking Member McGovern, and distinguished members of this Rules Committee for the opportunity to testify before you today. I am pleased to present to the Rules Committee the fiscal year 2026 Energy and Water Development and Related Agencies Appropriations Bill. This bill demonstrates our commitment to safeguarding U.S. national security, strengthening our economy, and unleashing American energy dominance in a fiscally responsible manner. This recommendation totals $57.3 billion, a decrease of $766 million below fiscal year 2025. The bill delivers strong support for our national defense and provides $25.3 billion for the National Nuclear Security Administration, prioritizing the continued modernization of the nuclear weapons stockpile and the United States Navy nuclear fleet. The bill strengthens our nation's energy security by advancing American leadership in deploying new nuclear technologies and supporting the administration's efforts to make full use of our nation's vast fossil fuel resources. This bill will reduce reliance on foreign materials and secure the full supply chain of critical minerals. The bill furthers our nation's scientific and technological leadership, providing $8.4 billion for the Department of Energy's Office of Science. At the same time, the bill reduces funding by 25% across numerous other department programs including the applied energy technology offices, to ensure taxpayer resources are focused on the highest priority research and developmental projects. This bill also strengthens our economy and promotes public safety, providing $9.9 billion for the Army Corps of Engineers, including full funding of the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund activities and the highest priority, ongoing construction projects on the inland waterways system. Funding for the Bureau of Reclamation is prioritized to projects that increase water supply and support drought resilience. Finally, the bill includes a number of provisions to codify President Trump's executive actions to protect American values and prevent our resources and intellectual property from falling into the hands of foreign adversaries. This is a strong bill, and I ask the committee to provide an appropriate rule for its consideration. Thank you again for the opportunity to appear today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you again for your succinctness. Representative Capter, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman Fox, Ranking Member McGovern, and members of the committee. It's heartening to appear before your subcommittee, along with our very hardworking chair, Charles Fleischman, on behalf of our hardworking subcommittee, and one that tries to be bipartisan even in these difficult times. Energy and water undergird America's way of life. They are not optional, but essential to life and prosperity. Of late, we've been piercingly reminded about our subcommittee's purpose. July brought nearly double the usual number of flood warnings, the second highest in 40 years, including the tragedy that killed 117 in Kerr County, Texas. And the U.S. set new records twice this past July for peak electricity demand. Sadly, this proposed measure by the Republican majority for 2026 in the Energy and Water Bill does not meet our nation's imperative for the future. Half a century ago, our nation had a population of 148 million people. Today, it is heading to 350 million and projected to be 500 million by 2060. We must invest faster in modern infrastructure and become energy independent in perpetuity. Lowering energy costs requires modernizing our grid and securing its resilience. Doing so is expensive. This bill fails to address the reality of the ongoing cost of living crisis. Household electric bills are up 10% nationally just since January, and in some places where the AI data centers are being installed, energy prices are doubling. Just ask anybody who lives in northern Ohio, and I'm sure your states too. Meanwhile, China is investing record levels in energy. But this bill retreats from U.S. continental and global leadership. Why do I say this? This energy and water bill cuts $1.6 billion, or 47%, nearly half, from the Department of Energy's energy efficiency and renewable energy programs to support local communities and businesses. This undermines our ability to deliver more clean, affordable, and secure energy. Energy security is national security. America must lead the global race toward energy independence in perpetuity. This bill eliminates funding for the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations. Worse, it revokes $5.1 billion of bipartisan infrastructure law resources from the Department of Energy that seeds the U.S. global lead in technologies such as hydrogen and batteries. This bill dangerously shortchanges our national security. It slashes $412 million, nearly $500 million, from the Defense Nuclear Non-Proliferation Account, a 17% cut. This effectively guts U.S. efforts to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons, detect covert nuclear threats, and uphold arms control agreements that keep America safe so far. Finally, this bill includes numerous controversial poison pill riders that are too extreme to gain bipartisan support and become law. In closing, I urge my colleagues to oppose this bill. America must lead, not shrink, in the new frontiers of energy and water, our nation's future. depends on them. Thank you so very much, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Capter. Representative Fleischman, is there anything that you'd like to respond to that Congresswoman Capter said? I'll give you a chance.
Well, I thank the ranking member for her comments, but we respectfully disagree on some major things. First and foremost, this is a good bill. The Department of Energy has two very important tangents to it. First of all is the NNSA, which is the National Nuclear Security Administration. In my great district, in the city of Oak Ridge, we've had the Y-12 plant. This was actually the birthplace of the Manhattan Project. We have got to fully fund, and we do fund our nuclear arsenal through the Department of Energy, through this bill. It is so important that we do this. Our adversaries, Russia, China, North Korea, and others, are sadly working towards ramping up their nuclear arsenals, in fact, working towards triads. Ours is still the strongest, ours is still the best, but this bill takes care of that. On the advancement of energy, and Madam Chair, I respectfully chair the American Dominance and Energy Caucus in Congress, in which we work with Republicans and Democrats in a very strong bipartisan way to ramp up Americans' energy production and hence Americans' energy dominance. This bill articulates those key goals. We have funds in there for things like geothermal. I'm a champion of nuclear, of course, but we want to make sure that in our great nation that we not only dominate in terms of energy production, Madam Chair, we've got to win this race, because I want to see a situation as President Trump's agenda works and we bring back manufacturing and great jobs to the United States, that we have the energy to support that. And with that, I'll yield back.
Thank you. Mr. McGovern.
Thank you. Mr. Fleischman, under your bill, as Ms. Capter pointed out, Republicans would cut energy efficiency and renewable energy programs by $1.6 billion. I mean, that's nearly 50% of total funding. This would eliminate funding for clean and affordable energy and raise energy costs for families in red and blue communities alike, all while China is literally making record investments in clean energy. Talk about an unforced era of epic proportions. But this bill would also result in a $102 million cut to Tennessee, including $85 million to the Oak Ridge National Laboratory in your region. Can you tell us how many grants would be paused, reduced, or terminated, and how many scientists and other employees would be laid off due to the cut to Oak Ridge National Lab?
Well, I appreciate the ranking member's question, and Ms. Capter did correctly state her comments on the record on that. But I would respectfully point out to the ranking member on this issue, nothing will be lost, because EERE, and I'm a supporter of EERE and what it has done, as are many of my colleagues on my side of the aisle and your side of the aisle. But as we look at the Inflation Reduction Act, prior appropriation bills, and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which was passed and signed into law, there was literally, Mr. Ranking Member, so much additional funding. It would be like 10 years or so worth of funding given to EERE. They can't spend the money that they've got. So the reality is no jobs will be lost. We will continue to support EERE, but they've got more than sufficient backlog of funds that they've yet to been able to spend. They were almost force-fed money in those programs.
Do you know how many employees across the 17 national labs would be impacted by a $1.6 billion cut to energy efficiency and renewable energy account?
My answer would be none, and they should be actually hiring some because of these unobligated funds that they have not been able to spend from this past legislation, where we actually had an overabundance of funding there.
Ms. Capter, do you share that view that this won't affect anything?
Unfortunately, I do not share that point of view, Mr. Ranking Member. We have a fact sheet that I actually will submit to your record that outlines the estimated cuts to the labs, the finest labs in the world where only U.S. citizens can work. And those reductions are estimated for fiscal year 2026, resulting in eliminating 7,700 scientists and staff. 7,700. That is an enormous number, and we know that the Department of Energy's fiscal 25 illegal changes could result in more than 3,000 lost lab jobs. This is cutting off America's best, secure research that belongs to the future of this country. So these are significant cuts, and to the minds of people who, always got A+ in everything in college, with their PhDs and experience in the private sector, these are significant cuts.
Thank you. Last week, President Trump took another swing at our democracy, this time by trying to zero out nearly $5 billion in funding to foreign aid programs without congressional approval. This so-called pocket rescission strategy would cancel funding that Congress has already appropriated and has already been signed into law by the President. The top Democrat and top Republican of the Senate Appropriations Committee have already said that this move by Trump is illegal and a violation of our Constitution, which gives Congress the power of spending taxpayer dollars, not the President. And according to the Government Accountability Office, or GAO, which provides fact-based, nonpartisan information to Congress and the American people, a pocket rescission, quote, bypasses Congress's power, end quote, and is, quote, illegal, end quote. Mr. Fleischman, do you agree with Susan Collins, the Republican chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, that President Trump's attempt to rescind appropriated funds without Congress's approval is, quote, these are her words, a clear violation of the law?
Mr. Ranking Member, I don't think that question, in all due respect, is germane to the energy and water bill that is before us. That is in another bill that is before this committee, which we used to refer to as the State and Foreign Operations.
Let me explain to you why. So government funding runs out in less than a month. We need a bipartisan agreement to stave off a government shutdown.
Agreed.
Right. But Republicans are continuing to move forward, as Ms. Kaptur said, with an extreme partisan go-it-alone strategy that has so far only led to 2 out of the 12 spending bills passing through the House and no plan to get any of these bills through the Senate. So we all want to work together because, all of our constituents will be heard if we continue going down this road of heavily partisan bills. But when Democrats, and here's why this, what I was asking before is relevant, but when Democrats work with Republicans to pass annual spending bills, we expect that those laws will be followed and funding will be spent as the law says. Just follow the law. And I guess the question is, how can we negotiate with you when we can't trust Republicans to abide by spending agreements we pass? I mean, the question I asked you as to whether or not you agreed with Senator Collins is really not a hard question. It's whether or not, you think she's right or wrong. And if you don't, if you think the president could just do these pocket rescissions and not have to abide by the will of Congress, well then, how do we, where's the trust? How do we negotiate anything? I mean, if President Trump and congressional Republicans cut deals with us, but then cancel the funding we just agreed to spend, I mean, how can we have a negotiation based on trust?
Well, I thank the ranking member for his question, and since he alluded to the other body, in all due respect, I have never fully understood the United States Senate or its rules and the like. I have enough on my plate as we do in our great people's house. But I have utmost respect for the Senate as a body. But the rhetoric coming from Senator Schumer, where he is actually threatening to shut the government down, let me be unequivocal. I do not believe in government shutdowns. They are detrimental to this country. We need to have bipartisan cooperation to keep the government open. I profess and I believe strongly that the way to work through differences, as the ranking member and I have, despite our friendship, there are differences that come up. We keep talking.
Right.
We don't close the process.
Right.
If the government gets shut down, Mr. Ranking Member, it's on Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats, and the American people will be heard loud and clear.
I didn't ask you about Chuck Schumer. I asked you about Senator Collins. And I'll ask.
I don't think she wants a government shutdown either.
Ms. Kaptur, again, you're on the Appropriations Committee. How do you deal with House Republicans, on spending levels and on, on how the money should be spent, when we're now seeing that they're not even willing to defend what they voted for in the past. They're willing to be silent when Trump does these pocket rescissions. I mean, like, we can negotiate a good deal, and then Trump just basically unilaterally, stops funding these projects. I mean, I think what Senator Collins said is right. I mean, that a pocket rescission bypasses Congress's power, and I think the more we turn a blind eye to the power of the legislative branch, the more we weaken it.
Yes, I would just like to say, I wonder if the president even knows what some of his agency people have done, Mr. Ranking Member and Madam Chair, because some of these changes really don't make much sense. And I think if the president had a chance to review them, maybe he'd change his mind, maybe not. But essentially what happens is it's going to end up in the courts because the law is not being followed as we passed before. And I just wanted to, if I could say 15 seconds, the Chinese currently can put a car on the road and it goes 2,000 miles with one charge. I could go through so many accounts and tell you how we are behind in research we need to do. And these are the labs that produce the future, whether it's nuclear or whether it's commercial. And so I would just urge the majority, and I know I've said this respectfully to Chairman Fleischman, I think we have to, he and I want to follow regular order, but there are other people involved that don't want to follow regular order. And, but to cut the labs at this level is not in the country's best interest.
And I thank you. That's an excellent point. Mr. Fleischman, just one more time. I mean, again, Susan Collins, the Republican chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, said that attempts to rescind appropriated funds by the president without Congress's approval is, quote, a clear violation of the law. Do you agree with that sentiment? I mean, whether it's Trump or Biden or any future president,
I am deferential, Mr. Ranking Member, to not only the administration, and I do trust President Trump and his discernment in these issues, but I also trust House and Senate appropriators to get the job done. And ultimately, as the Ranking Member knows, it's going to take 60 votes in the United States Senate to affect anything.
If you vote to appropriate funds, right, again, this is not a trick question. I mean, would you agree that the president, any president, doesn't have the right to unilaterally, revoke those funds without congressional approval? I mean, that's
It's a fair question. Whether Republican or Democratic,
Yeah,
there is flexibility built into these accounts, and the executive branch has to deal with the day-to-day situations in the country and the world, and that's why there is flexibility built in. So I do trust what President Trump would do in terms of these decision makings. I think our job as appropriators is to give, first of all, keep the government open. Secondly, give a framework and adequately fund the government, which I think the Republican majority can and will do, and then basically work with our colleagues in the Senate and in the White House to make sure this country is run well.
And again, I think if anybody were listening to your answer right now on the Democratic side, either in the House or the Senate, it is really alarming, because basically what you won't answer is whether or not we have the power of the purse, whether we can appropriate funds, and the only way to not utilize these funds is for Congress to decide. I mean, you voted for a rescissions package. I mean, I didn't like it, but you can do that. But the idea that we're willing to say that, the president, we can't answer whether the president has the right or not the right to be able to do what he's doing. I mean, that makes it very difficult to have a negotiation. But I thank the gentleman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. McGovern. Ms. Fishbach, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Chairman, we know that the Americans in general are asking for us to cut. They are asking for us to have a responsible budget. They know we're in debt, and it is something that I hear all the time. And maybe you can just speak briefly a little bit about how this bill meets that demand, but also ensuring that we are funding, critical U.S. priorities.
Well, thank you. I thank my distinguished colleague from Minnesota for her questions, and I appreciate that. This bill actually does cut. It's $766 billion, I think I said in my opening statement, under fiscal 2025. So it is a fiscally responsible bill. Given the allocations that we have to make difficult decisions. There's been some talk about EERE and other programs and things like that. But what we have done, we have plussed up the Office of Science, which funds our great national labs, which I think all of our colleagues can agree are national assets. There's 17 of them. I have Oak Ridge National Lab. It increases funding for nuclear energy. So it does make decisions in terms of prioritizations while being fiscally responsible and reducing overall spending.